So the whole world is obsessed with large language models, right? They're absolutely everywhere. But what if I told you that one of the most important figures in the history of AI thinks this whole thing might just be a dead end?
And that quote right there from the man himself, Richard Sutton, really gets to the heart of it. He's saying, yeah, LLMs are incredible mimics. They're amazing at sounding like us, but they're missing that key ingredient, that secret sauce of actual intelligence. And look, you gotta understand, this isn't just some hot take. We're talking about a guy who is one of the fathers of reinforcement learning. He just won the Turing Award, which is, well, it's literally the Nobel Prize for computer science. So when he speaks, the entire field stops and listens. Let's really break down his argument, because it's a fascinating one.
Okay, first things first. What exactly does Sutton mean when he says LLMs are on the wrong path? Well, it all boils down to two totally different philosophies about how an AI should learn about the world.
This chart really nails the difference. On one hand, you have the LLM paradigm. Think of it like a student who has memorized every book ever written. Its knowledge comes from a static library, the internet, and its main goal is just to predict the next word in a sentence. On the other hand, you have Sutton's vision, the experiential or reinforcement learning paradigm. This is more like an explorer, learning from a live stream of its own experiences, trying to actually achieve a real goal out there in the world.
And this brings us to a really crucial idea, ground truth. For an LLM, there's no real right or wrong. There's just what a person would probably say next. It's all about consensus. But in reinforcement learning, there is a ground truth. Did your action help you achieve your goal or not? That feedback, that reward signal, well, that's everything.
And that distinction really leads us to the absolute core of Sutton's critique, which is this huge difference between just mimicking intelligence versus actually understanding something.
So here's the breakdown. Sutton's saying that an LLM predicts language, not reality. If you ask it what happens when a glass falls, it predicts the words that describe it breaking. It doesn't actually model the physics of the event. And this is key. If something unexpected happens, the model doesn't fundamentally change its worldview, it just moves on to the next prediction. It's the ultimate mimic, not a genuine learner.
Now, the obvious question here is, wait a second, isn't this how we got here? We fed these models all of human knowledge, and suddenly they got incredibly smart. How can that possibly be the wrong way to go? Well, this leads us to Sutton's most famous and maybe most misunderstood idea.
And this is where the story takes a really interesting turn. It all has to do with a surprising twist on Sutton's own legendary essay.
If you're an AI, you've read The Bitter Lesson. It's basically required reading. It makes this incredibly powerful claim about what kind of approaches always win out in the long run.
So the bitter part of the lesson is that for decades, researchers tried to handcraft intelligence, to bake in specific human knowledge. And they always lost to simple, general methods that just scale up with more and more computing power. A lot of people today look at LLMs, trained with massive compute on massive data, and say, see, this is the ultimate proof of the bitter lesson. But you know what? Sutton says they've got it all wrong.
And here is the big twist. Sutton argues that today's LLMs are actually the human knowledge systems that his lesson warns us about. Why? Because they're totally dependent on a fixed, static library of human-generated text. He believes that a true learning system, one that gathers its own data from raw experience, will be infinitely more scalable. And eventually, it will be the thing that supersedes LLMs, proving the bitter lesson correct all over again. Okay, so if LLMs aren't the future, then what is? What is this alternative system that Sutton is imagining? One that learns directly from experience. What does that actually look like?
The vision is for an agent that is always learning. It's not about a training phase and then a deployment phase. It's just life. It's an AI that's constantly out in the world, taking in sensations, trying out actions, and getting feedback, rewards, just like an animal does.
And this kind of agent is built on 4 core components working together. First, you need perception, so it can figure out, okay, where am I right now? Second, it needs a world model to predict, if I do this, what's going to happen next? Third, it has a value function, which is kind of like an internal compass asking, is this going well? Am I getting closer to my goal? And finally, a policy, which is what actually decides what to do next. All 4 of these things constantly updating all the time. And this is the real superpower. An agent like this can learn the specific, unique details of its own little corner of the world. The preferences of the specific person it's helping, or the layout of a building it's never been in before. That's the kind of knowledge you just can't get from reading a generic text corpus like the internet. You have to learn it from direct experience.
Now for Sutton, this whole debate is not just a technical squabble between researchers. This is about the ultimate destiny of intelligence in our universe. It gets pretty deep.
He genuinely believes that building these kinds of truly learning AIs isn't just a possibility, it's an inevitability. He sees it as a fundamental, universe-altering event. And he's got a pretty straightforward, four-step argument for why he thinks that.
The logic is pretty simple when you lay it out. 1. There's no world government that can just halt AI research everywhere. 2. We're smart, we're curious, we will eventually figure out how intelligence actually works. 3. We're not going to stop when we get to human-level AI, are we? Of course not. We're going to keep going. And 4. Over the grand sweep of history, the most intelligent entities are the ones that end up with the most resources and influence. You put all that together, and he says, succession is inevitable.
But here's where he really diverges from a lot of people. Where many find that idea absolutely terrifying, Sutton sees it differently. He thinks we should be proud. He frames it as this grand cosmic transition, from intelligence based on messy biological evolution to intelligence based on deliberate design. So this really sets up the huge philosophical choice in front of us. The common fear is that AIs are our replacements, something alien that will end us, and that we should be horrified. But Sutton's perspective is completely different. He says, no, think of them as our offspring, our descendants. We should feel a sense of kinship. This isn't the end of humanity, it's the ultimate success of humanity.
And that really is the question he leaves us with. Is our relationship with these future intelligences going to be one of conflict or one of kinship? Sutton's argument is that the answer isn't a technical problem we have to solve. It's a choice in how we choose to see our own creation.